The phone line went silent for nearly 10 seconds after the woman whispered her final words, and for the first time in 12 years of live broadcasting, the blind radio host couldn't find a single sentence to say. Millions of listeners thought they had just witnessed another emotional call-in segment. None of them knew that the trembling voice on the other end had unknowingly reached the one place no darkness had ever been able to touch, his heart. Even more unbelievable, neither of them realized that fate had already intertwined their lives years before. If you believe in kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe to our channel so our community can continue sharing stories that remind us that the strongest connections are often made long before we understand why they matter. For most people, daylight revealed colors, faces, and familiar places. For Callum Reeves, daylight revealed something different. It brought the comforting warmth of the morning sun against his skin, the cheerful songs of birds outside the studio window, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee drifting through the hallway, and the countless voices that filled his world with pictures no eyes could ever capture. Blind since a highway accident at 19, Callum had refused to let darkness define the rest of his life. After years of rehabilitation and determination, he transformed his extraordinary listening skills into a career that made him one of the country's most beloved daytime radio hosts. His daily program wasn't built around celebrity gossip or sensational headlines. It revolved around ordinary people sharing extraordinary moments, offering hope, forgiveness, and encouragement to complete strangers. Every weekday afternoon, thousands tuned in because Callum possessed a remarkable gift. He listened without judging. People trusted him with stories they had never shared with anyone else. Parents spoke about losing children. Veterans described invisible scars. Teenagers confessed fears about the future. Elderly callers reflected on lifetimes filled with regret and gratitude. Somehow, Callum always found words that gently stitched broken hearts back together. Yet behind his calm voice rested a loneliness he carefully protected. Encouraging others to heal had become easier than admitting he still carried wounds of his own. One bright spring afternoon, the producer signaled another anonymous caller. The woman sounded nervous, almost ready to hang up before speaking. She explained she had spent years hiding from someone she believed deserved an apology. She described making one heartbreaking decision that changed another person's life forever, even though she believed she had acted with good intentions. She never revealed names. She never explained every detail. Still, every sentence carried sincerity powerful enough to silence the entire studio. Before ending the conversation, she quietly said she hoped the person she had hurt had found happiness, even if forgiveness was impossible. Then the call disconnected. Callum remained speechless. There was something about her voice. Not simply its gentle rhythm. It carried compassion wrapped inside quiet sorrow. Long after the microphones turned off, he found himself replaying every word in his memory. The following afternoon, she called again. This time she discussed volunteer work at a community literacy center where adults learn to read later in life. She laughed softly while describing an elderly student who proudly finished his first novel at 78. Her joy sounded genuine, free from performance or attention. She refused to give her name again, insisting anonymous kindness mattered more than recognition. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. Her calls arrived almost every Thursday afternoon. Sometimes she shared stories about hope. Sometimes grief. Sometimes forgiveness. Listeners began affectionately referring to her simply as the Thursday Voice. Nobody knew her identity. Not even Callum. Strangely, he never wanted to pressure her into revealing it. He admired her honesty too much. Outside the studio, the mysterious caller lived a life equally complicated. Her name was Meredith Rowan. Years earlier, she had worked as a rehabilitation assistant at the hospital where Callum recovered after losing his eyesight. Fresh out of university and overwhelmed by responsibility, Meredith had accidentally misfiled paperwork that delayed approval for an advanced mobility training program by several crucial weeks. Although another supervisor ultimately corrected the mistake, Meredith blamed herself for every setback Callum experienced during those difficult days. Embarrassed and consumed by guilt, she quietly transferred to another city before ever apologizing. She spent years wondering whether that young man had eventually rebuilt his life. She never imagined he had become the voice she listened to every afternoon. Nor did she know the blind host she admired was the very person she had once believed she had failed. Meanwhile, Callum slowly discovered something unsettling about himself. He looked forward to Thursdays more than any other day. Not because of curiosity. Because her voice made him feel understood in ways no one else ever had. She challenged his opinions respectfully. Celebrated ordinary acts of kindness. Found beauty in simple moments. He had never seen her face. He didn't know her age, career, or appearance. Yet somewhere along the journey, admiration quietly became affection. His closest friend and producer, Declan Foster, noticed immediately. Declan joked that Callum smiled differently whenever Thursday arrived. Callum laughed the observation away. Deep inside, he knew it was true. One afternoon, Meredith shared a story about planting wildflowers beside abandoned sidewalks simply because strangers deserved something beautiful during difficult days. Callum spent the rest of the broadcast discussing how unseen acts of kindness often leave the deepest impact. The segment spread across social media, inspiring hundreds of local volunteers to create community gardens across the city. Newspapers praised the movement without ever knowing it had begun with one anonymous phone call. As the months passed, listeners repeatedly requested a special daytime community celebration honoring people whose unseen kindness changed lives. Callum enthusiastically supported the idea. The station organized a public event in the city's botanical gardens featuring musicians, local charities, storytellers, and volunteers. Thousands planned to attend. Declan quietly arranged something else. Believing two extraordinary souls deserved to meet, he invited Meredith after privately tracing her identity through station records. He never told Callum. Meredith hesitated. Fear immediately returned. What if Callum recognized her name? What if learning the truth erased every meaningful conversation they had shared? She nearly declined. Then she remembered all the encouragement Callum had offered strangers over the years. Perhaps courage meant following her own advice. The morning of the event arrived beneath brilliant sunshine. Families filled the gardens. Children painted murals. Volunteers distributed books. Musicians performed cheerful acoustic melodies. Callum greeted listeners one by one, recognizing many only through their voices. Then Declan gently guided one final guest toward him. Meredith's heartbeat raced. Callum extended his hand with his familiar warm smile. She softly introduced herself. The moment he heard her speak without the distance of a telephone line, recognition washed over him instantly. The Thursday voice. She nodded despite knowing he couldn't see. Tears quietly formed. For several moments, neither spoke. Finally Meredith confessed everything. She explained the hospital mistake. The overwhelming guilt. Leaving without apologizing. Years spent believing she had permanently damaged a young man's future. She expected disappointment. Perhaps even anger. Instead, Callum surprised everyone nearby. He thanked her. Not for the mistake. For calling. He admitted those Thursday conversations had restored hope during seasons when work had become routine and loneliness quietly followed him home each afternoon. If she had never gathered the courage to call anonymously, they never would have discovered how deeply their lives still belonged in each other's stories. Meredith struggled to understand. She insisted the delay she caused had made his recovery harder. Callum smiled gently. Then he revealed something she had never known. During those unexpected extra weeks in rehabilitation, another patient introduced him to audio broadcasting equipment for the first time. Had the paperwork never been delayed, he would have left before meeting the retired broadcaster who eventually mentored him. That friendship ultimately shaped his entire career. Life hadn't excused the mistake. It had transformed it. Both quietly realized something extraordinary. The event each believed had permanently ruined the future had actually redirected it toward purpose. Forgiveness no longer felt impossible. It felt inevitable. Their friendship blossomed naturally over the following months. Instead of anonymous Thursday phone calls, Meredith occasionally visited the studio during daytime broadcasts to discuss literacy programs, community volunteers, and everyday heroes making neighborhoods brighter. Listeners adored the thoughtful conversations between them, though few ever learned the remarkable history connecting the two voices. Together they launched a national reading initiative encouraging volunteers to record audiobooks for visually impaired children and elderly readers losing their eyesight. Schools, libraries, and retirement communities embraced the project. Thousands participated. What began as one apology evolved into a movement touching countless lives. Callum often reminded audiences that blindness had never prevented him from recognizing kindness. Meredith frequently added that guilt becomes lighter the moment honesty replaces fear. Their combined message inspired people to repair fractured relationships, reconnect with estranged family members, and seek forgiveness where pride had once stood. One sunny afternoon exactly 1 year after their first meeting, the Botanical Gardens hosted another community celebration. This time, children performed stories from the audiobook project while volunteers shared letters describing how the recordings had changed lives. Callum stood beside Meredith listening to laughter carried through warm spring air. He reflected on everything fate had quietly arranged. A tragic accident. An administrative mistake. Years of silence. One anonymous phone call. None of it seemed accidental anymore. Sometimes life's most painful chapters become bridges leading two wounded hearts toward healing neither believed possible. Meredith gently placed a small wooden keepsake into Callum's hands. It was shaped like an old-fashioned radio microphone. Carved beneath it were simple words. "The heart always hears first." Callum smiled. He didn't need eyesight to appreciate its beauty. He understood it completely. Before we reach the end of this journey, we'd love to hear from you. Please leave a meaningful comment sharing whether you've ever received forgiveness you never expected, or whether someone has ever changed your life with nothing more than a kind voice at exactly the right moment. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. May this story remind us that love is never measured by appearances, but by compassion, honesty, and the courage to forgive. Sometimes the people destined to transform our lives first arrive as strangers whose voices simply make us feel less alone. And sometimes, before we ever know someone's name, our hearts have already recognized the person they were waiting for all along.